my name's Alistair, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the topics that we learned about in the text regarding Florence Nightingale and the patterns of knowing. So throughout the readings, I kept getting this concept kept coming up over and over again about Florence Nightingale's view of nursing, which is essentially the discovery of God's laws and its application. So as nurses, it's our responsibility to get the patient in the best possible condition that they can in order for healing to occur, whether that be through hygiene, through linen changes, feeds, emotional, physical, mental support, whatever it is. We want to get them in the best possible state that they can be in order for that healing to occur. I think that still is relevant now, especially with the disease and quarantine and everything, and social determinants of health. We want to do whatever we can within that room or within the community or environment to take away any predisposing factors so that the patient can either be healed if they're trying to overcome something, or be treated. Another big aspect that they talked about is the idea that sickness is an aspect or quality of the body as a whole. So it's a reparative process. So it's not that a person is sick, but that a person has a sickness or an illness, and it's a process. I think this goes hands in hand with the updated version of the definition of health. As most of us probably learned in microbiology, health used to just mean the absence of a disease. However, now the majority of people are living with chronic diseases and eventually dying from chronic diseases and conditions. And so Florence Nightingale viewing the sickness as an aspect of it still allowed for people to maintain their highest level of health as possible, which I think was very groundbreaking given the state of the medical healthcare system at the time that she was practicing. And then another big concept that Florence Nightingale had was the concept that disease comes from environments. The text said that she was part of the group of anti-contagionism, which means that she thought that diseases came just from the environments, and in order to rid the disease, hygiene was central to that by cleaning up and making sure that the locals area were hygienic in order to avoid its spread. While we now know that there are contagions that can be spread to get people sick, we also know that cleanliness and hygiene are of the utmost importance within communities, within the OR, within the ER, within any sort of medical setting, and in the public. So I think these three big concepts are still being used today and were groundbreaking given the time that she was practicing. So now I want to transition a little bit into the patterns of knowing. So an example of when I kind of experienced one of these was I actually experienced the aesthetic pattern of knowing. And the aesthetic pattern of knowing places an emphasis on the artfulness of a healing environment, or the art of nursing. I kind of witnessed this firsthand while I was working as a student nurse intern at Freighter. We had a patient come in who was just admitted, and I went and talked to her, got vitals, kind of got her whole story, and she was talking very well with me. She was alert and oriented ×4, and everything seemed to be going relatively well. We ended up ordering her a dinner tray for that night and giving it to her. About 20 minutes later, I walked in the room just to check to see if she was done eating or see if there was anything that I can get for her, and she hadn't touched her plate, which was a little strange to me because she did mention that she was really hungry. So I tried talking to her and seeing what was going on, and I said, are you still hungry? She said, no, I'm not. And something just seemed off. She was having a little trouble speaking, but nothing too crazy, but there was just something that I felt something was going on. I put her on the pulse ox, and she was her pulse oxygen saturation was going down into the high 80s, which concerned me because she was in the mid to high 90s before. And I just had this feeling that something was off because her demeanor was way different than how I was talking with her earlier. I ended up going and telling the nurse, and when the nurse did go in, her oxygen level had dropped even more, and we ended up having to call a rapid response. And I think that shows like the aesthetic or the art of it, because even though there was that empirical pulse ox that was going down a little bit, but it wasn't rapidly declining, and it also wasn't, in the low 80s or 70s, because we do have quite a few patients that are in the high 80s range. But I think that the real reason why I kind of suspected something was up was because I had that initial conversation relationship with her, and I saw dramatic change when nothing dramatic, she hadn't gotten any news or nothing dramatic had occurred within that period of time. So I think that's an example of aesthetic, is just having that feeling and having a good sense of your patient so that you're able to tell and recognize when something is going on. And then lastly, I kind of want to talk about how Nightingale's theories and the patterns of knowing apply to nurses today. So going back to Nightingale, it's clear that today, regardless of what people believe of what heals people, we need to put them in the best opportunity to get healed. So if we're able to maintain a clean environment, maintain them from getting any new infections, and prevent any new infections, that is going to help the patient and their immune system to fight off whatever's going on. We know that now health is a continuum, and that someone is not sick but just has a sickness. And even if it's a chronic one that stays with them for life, we know that it's a reparative process and a continuum of health. And then we also know that while there are contagions that are spread, trying to clean and keep that environment safe and healthy goes a long way in preventing and helping to treat different conditions. So I think that's how Nightingale directly applies to nursing practice today. With regards to the patterns of knowing, like I mentioned, my example happened maybe 2 weeks ago. So I think that, encompassing the aesthetic pattern of knowing and getting a real feel for your patient and trying to hone in that art of nursing, which I am still working on every day, will help us become better nurses in the future. Thank you.